Hey, this is Ben, back to discuss the rankings of how highly people have been drafting my cube on CubeTutor's website. So this is the ranking of all the blue cards and how high people have been ranking them. Again, I'm just going to do a brief recap of each of the cards, probably in the top 10, and then just kind of hit the bullet points down the road of all 68 cards as far as which cards I think are over or undervalued. So first up, we have Time Walk, listed as the number one drafted blue card in my cube. For me, if I'm ranking the cube cards overall, I would have Ancestral Recall ahead of Time Walk. So seeing that third is surprising. I guess people like the extra turns more than they're liking the draw three cards. But personally, I would have Soul Ring first in the whole. We're talking the whole cube. I would have Soul Ring first, then Library, then Ancestral Recall, and then Time Walk. So obviously, we're nitpicking here, talking about Ancestral or Time Walk, which card's better, because they're both truly insane. But if it was me, it would be Ancestral Recall number one. So seeing Time Walk here first is interesting. Even more interesting is seeing Jace the Mind Sculptor at number two. Jace obviously is the best Planeswalker they've ever printed or will ever print. But seeing it here at number two is surprising in that, not that it's necessarily worse than the other cards, but just the other cards are, I don't know, they're a little more flashy, but it's Jace. Jace is the most iconic Planeswalker that they've ever printed. So, and also is for signal sending too, because I know if it was pack one, pick one, I was having this conversation with the blue drafter the other day, and he said that he would consider taking Jace pack one, pick one, if for no other reason than for a signal, just because there's no way you're going to be able to pass Jace to your neighbor pack one, pick one, and they get a second pick Jace, and they're not going to play blue. There's just no way that's going to happen. So Ancestral Recall third. Ancestral Recall third, really good. And then Mana Drain fourth. It's not power, but it's pretty close. Being able to counter is a counter spell that just ramps you like crazy. So Mana Drain fourth, I agree with that as well. So I agree with the top four, not necessarily in this order, but I agree with having those as the top four cards. Fifth might surprise some people is Tameo. Personally, I think Tameo is one of the most underrated planeswalkers that exists in the cube. It's a 5-drop planeswalker. She can protect herself, and then her ultimate is just insane, but mainly just being able to use her +1 over and over just to tap down your opponent's biggest threat is super value. And Tameo's great. I probably would not put Tameo above Treachery, which is 6th, but I probably would put it 6th. Wow. So I would have Treachery above Tameo, but again, Tameo is a great card, and Treachery is control magic, 5-mana control magic, and steal your best creature and have mana untapped to do a second spell. Go Treachery into Tameo, Treachery into Bribery, Treachery into leaving mana up for Factor Fiction or a counter spell. I mean, whatever you want to do. Treachery is just nuts. So 7th is Vendilion Click. I don't like this card as much as some people. I would probably have it in the top 20, but I would not have it this high at 7th. One of the drafters who we cube with consistently, this is his favorite card in the whole cube, so he has first picked it over some really good cards. So this might be some of his bias coming into this, but I don't know. I'd like to get some feedback on what everyone else thinks on Vendilion Click. I don't think it's 7th. Seeing Bribery at 8th is really interesting because I've read some articles over the last year or two where people think Bribery is not good enough for the cube. And while it's not always a home run against like some of the red decks or the super aggro decks, but still, even grabbing like a Flametongue Kavu out of an aggro deck can be okay. And if that's the worst case scenario, that's still pretty good. But I do think Bribery is overrated on this list. Factor Fiction at 9th is awesome. I would probably have Factor Fiction. I'd have to see the next 10, but maybe just behind Treachery if I was doing my own personal rankings, because it's splashable and it draws you at least the best card out of your top 5. It usually draws you 2 or 3, though. Snapcaster at 10. That was a great card that they printed just a couple years ago. Snapcaster has been sweet in the cube, and I undervalued it a lot until I got to play with it some and read how some people were taking it like first out of a pack, which I thought was ludicrous at the time. And then I started seeing more and more of the value of how Snapcaster plays out, and it's been awesome. So this is the top 10 of the blue cards. Now this is the next 10. Control Magic is a card I love. I love drafting Control Magic, and I personally overvalue it, so this might be a little high compared to where it should normally go, but I think Control Magic's great. Similarly, Upheaval is a great build-around card, especially if you get it early. I've been doing that on the Cube Tutor drafts a lot. I've gotten a ton of practice in building the Upheaval deck. In real life, I've probably only drafted it 1 or 2 times, but on the Cube Tutor site, I've been able to just draft it over and over and get a better idea of which cards are more important and which cards are less important. Phantasmal Image is great. Again, splashable, 2 mana, especially if you get something with Shroud or Hexproof. It's essentially unkillable at that point. Well, as unkillable as creatures are. Baby Jace, again, I don't like Baby Jace that much. Not that high on the list. And honestly, I don't play with Baby Jace too often because he gets taken before I would take it. Force of Will, and then Frost Titan is a Titan. Some people don't even run Frost Titan, but it's in our top 20 in the best color in the cube. So I think Frost Titan is just excellent. Not as good as Consecrated Sphinx, but it's actually close depending on what kind of deck you're building. If you're just looking for a true finisher, Frost Titan's great. Consecrated Sphinx better because it's got flying and it draws you a ton of cards. But if you're just looking for a true finisher, Frost Titan really does the job. Next 10, new Jace. Jace, Architect of Thought's been pretty good. Interesting to see all these counter spells all right next to each other. So that kind of shows me they're all valued similarly. That type of effect, the 2 mana counter spell, Condescend can be a 2 mana counter spell. Shelldock Isle's awesome. Shackles, that's pretty good ranking for Shackles as well. It's really hard to comment on these cards because a lot of them all seem pretty in line with how I would rank them. Like, I'm not seeing any cards on this list, like with the white section, I thought some cards were very high or low, but all this is looking pretty in line with how I feel about the blue section. Shelldock Isle should probably be a little higher because being able to cast spells for free in the color that will get down to 20 cards the easiest is just so sweet. Especially mid-combat tricks or end of turn. It's awesome. So, next 10, Ancestral Vision. Some people would think that's a little low for Ancestral Vision. I think it's fine. Tinker, Tinker's a niche card, but it's here like almost exactly just in the middle of the pack for blue. Moloku, I think this is low for Moloku. I feel like Moloku's are, I guess, blue's not lacking for finishers with the Frost Titan, now Aetherling, Consecrated Sphinx. Blue's not lacking for the 5 or 6 or 7 drop finishers, but I feel like Moloku's definitely one of the best ones, one of the most resilient ones. Especially can give you a ton of chump blockers if you're just trying to survive. Moloku's awesome. Venser's another sweet card. It's a good build around. And back to the functional reprints, even though Mana War, Aether Adept are different, Mana War only costing 1 blue and Aether Adept costing the double blue. Where is Aether Adept? That is much lower than I expected. Wow. So here's Aether Adept at 56 up to Mana War, which is 32. So a 24 spot difference because of the casting cost. I would assume that's the biggest thing. Like I talked about before, some of it's going to be bias and small sample size and all that stuff. But 24 different spots just because of the casting cost. To me, that's in a nutshell summarizes why the casting cost is so important when you're building decks, even blue decks. Blue decks care about that. And especially the aggro decks, you got to have enough mana fixing and not having a bunch of double casting cost cards. You know, cards like Knight of Meadowgrain or Ash Zealot are great, but you can't have a section full of double white and double red cards if you want to build consistent aggro decks. So, thankfully with the printings recently, we've been able to cut a lot of those. So again, some more, a couple counter spells here. Next 10, Cyclonic Rift has been really good for us. I'm not going to say that this is undervalued, but I do think that it's worth cubing if you're at 450 or higher. It's been very good. Gifts is another card that I did not like for a long time, and recently I've started to see more and more of the value for it. Afreed is a card I like a lot in blue, just because it blocks pretty much all the aggro stuff that they're going to send at you. Aetherlane, I think in the long term, Aetherlane's going to be much higher than this. I don't know if it's going to be the best quote-unquote blue finisher, but it's definitely going to be higher than 50th. Definitely going to be higher than where it is right now. Here's the next 10. Show and Tell's a recent addition to the cube. Still not sure how I feel about it, to be honest, but it's in there. Going to try it. Give people the chance to do the Show and Tell decks. I do support Sneak Attack, but I don't have Emrakul or anything like truly awesome like that. I mean, I do have a couple other Eldrazi's and stuff like that, but I don't. We'll see about Show and Tell. So seeing Aether Adept this low is surprising. As seeing Repeal this low is surprising too. One of my drafters in my circle said that he considered cutting Repeal from the cube, which I just thought was blasphemy, but it's interesting seeing how low it is, close to the bottom 10 on this list, that maybe he's onto something with that. Not that I want to cut Repeal necessarily, but just its value in the cube. Mystical Tutor, I'm still not sold on either. It's been hit and miss, but I think it's an effect that is fine. It's a tutor effect, which is always strong, but tutoring for a counterspell is not what you want to do. But being able to tutor, like if you're blue-white for a control or for a Wrath, is really sweet. So being able to tutor for Wrath, I think, is one of the biggest advantages of the Mystical Tutor in the blue deck. So similarly, this is kind of low for Kira. Maybe Kira, the more we're playing, I think Kira's prime time has passed. So Kira might be a card that's worth cutting if they start printing some good blue creatures. The last of the list, Fettergeist. If I had to cut one card from my blue section today, I think it would be Fettergeist. Just because when it was printed, I was so excited. I'm like, yes, a freak card, a 3/4 flyer. That's exactly what blue needs. Early defense against the aggro decks. But the more I play and the more I draft, I'm in the blue deck, and I just pass Fettergeist like every time. It's not what I want, because especially if I'm playing with like a Lingering Souls or something like that, it's just so bad, and blue doesn't want to tie up its mana. So if I had to cut one card today, it would be Fettergeist, even over all these other cards listed here. But a lot of these cards I feel are not necessary. Actually, looking at this whole list, like if all these cards, in Time Spiral, the blue drafter would get mad at me for cutting Time Spiral. But outside of that, these other 7 cards, if they all disappeared from the cube today, I don't think anybody would really notice. Which is really interesting, because right now I'm about 5 playables or 5 cards shy in my blue and white section of being balanced to the other colors. But there's not really any blue cards I really want to add to the section. I'm going to try out a Spell Pierce here shortly, but there's nothing else I really want to put in there. So, I don't know, but just looking at how, back to the top of the list, I mean, these cards are all so insane. Like the top 20 is just really strong for blue, obviously. But even like the next 20 is still really good. Like I first picked Tinker before. It's a sweet build around card. Or Ancestral Vision. I saw somebody first pick that the other night, and it seemed reasonable in that pack. Moloku's great. So I mean, the top 40 all look really good. Even this part, like this stuff's really good. Like Aetherline's awesome. I like the Ifrit a lot. Gifts goes in some sweet like Reanimate decks or value decks. But like once you get past that, like the bottom 10's kind of sketchy. Actually, no, it's just like the bottom 8. But even like Crystal Shard, I read an article saying that Crystal Shard will be gone from cubes here within the next year or two. I like Force Spike a lot of 1-mana counterspell. That's why I want to put Spell Pierce in, even though it's more restrictive. But yeah, so I wish some more quality blue cards would get printed, if for no other reason than I can start bumping off like the Willbenders or like the Fettergeist. Opposition, I should back up. Opposition has been good in the cube. It's very much a blue-green card more than any other color combination. But in the blue-green deck with Opposition, it is very oppressive, and it's been good. So I think my green drafters would miss it if Opposition disappeared, though I don't think it's necessarily essential for the decks that are built in my cube. So that's kind of a summary of the blue section in my cube. Lots of interesting stuff. Just seeing Ancestral third, but I mean, this is why blue is drafted so heavily, not just because it has the best cards, but just like looking at this top of this list, like how many of these cards would I first pick? I mean, I would first pick not Click, probably not Bribery, but I would first pick the top 6 every time. Pack one, pick one, I would slam all these cards pretty much every time. And then Fact or Fiction I would first pick as well. So I mean, that's 7 really strong cards to take pack one, pick one, or even like second pick Consecrated Sphinx or Mana Leak. I mean, or Upheaval. That's a great build around card. So I don't know. Lots of interesting stuff here for the blue section. And I would like to go back and do this again here in a couple months after M14's been out for a little while. Some more drafts have been done just to kind of see how people value these cards. And again, this drafting's happening against bots, so it's not necessarily a 100% reflection of how good the cards are, but it's a great starting point and gives me lots of valuable information as the cube designer. So that's the information on the blue, and I'll do the other sections next. Thanks.